Abyss. In the era peace, there are not many dangerous professions, but underwater salvage is one of them. I was originally an ordinary member of a naval amphibious reconnaissance team, but I retired in 1983 after leaving the army. I transferred to a county town to do clerical work and lived a peaceful life for 10 years, thinking that I was still young. I couldn't stand the persuasion of my old comrades at arms, and after some persuasion, I went back to my old trade, that is, to be a salvager, and the remuneration was quite good. However, just 3 years later, I was involved in a strange incident. It was not supposed to be mentioned now, but thinking that 35 years have passed, some of the people who knew the truth have revealed a lot, but some details, except for me, only Jen knows, and others have taken the secret and sank into the abyss that year. This year, Jen also died before he died. He told me that this matter must be said before I die, and it can't be covered up in the dark. In 1985, the county town where I was located was in a mountainous area of Haijiang province. There was nothing important to do in my daily work, and most of the time was idle, so the life was very leisurely. Just as I was hesitating whether I was old enough to find a girl to get married and have children, the instructor who trained me when I was a soldier sent a bizarre letter. The instructor's name is Dane. He always knew how to scold us with a stern face during training, but he was quite good in private, and he also had some real skills, so we all respected him and called him Captain Dane. The content of the letter was that he received an order from his superior to go to Jian County, Haijiang province to perform a task. After arriving at the place, he found that the Xin'anjiang Reservoir was really vast, with many islands and complex underwater situations, and the matter was difficult to handle. The superiors said that the situation was very special, and the people assigned were all new soldiers with guns. After thinking about it, the old subordinates, who were demobilized to Haijiang province, that is, Jen and I, were quite skilled, so he wrote a letter to me and Jen, asking if we could talk to the unit and go to help, that is, to salvage something underwater, which would be enough in 3 or 5 days. As usual, the army would issue an allowance. He also said that after entering the lake area, he brought back some very strange clues and urgently needed people to help underwater, so he left someone at the reception station, waiting for me and Jen, and it would be best if we could hurry over. No matter what profession you are in, once you develop a habit, it is difficult to change. I was just bumbling at that time, feeling bored, and the reservoir in the county town also reached the dry season in spring, and there was no one to ask me to salvage anything all day. So as soon as I received the letter, I immediately packed up and prepared to go to the big reservoir of Xin'anjiang to take a look. Jian is not far from the county town where I work. It takes less than a day to take a bus. So when I arrived in Jian, it was not yet dusk. According to the address in the letter, I went to the so-called reception station. I was hesitating whether to say hello, and a person came out from inside. I recognized this person. He was an old Navy diving predecessor, who was also a beheading hero who made a name for himself during the tense situation in the early years. After the situation eased in 1975, he started to be an instructor with Captain Dane. When I was trained, I often saw him come to drink with Captain Dane. He was very enthusiastic when he saw me, and his surname was Luo, and I also called him Chief Luo like others. Chief Luo's eyes were red, and he was wearing casual clothes. When he saw me, he was startled, then blinked, and immediately rushed up with great enthusiasm, tightly holding my hand. "Ah, Comrade Wan Ning is here. It's good to be here." "Good, it's good to be here." I followed Chief Luo and walked inside, asking him, "Where is Captain Dan? It's almost dark, and he hasn't come back yet." Chief Luo frowned and said, "Old Dang went out in the morning and shouldn't be back so soon. You come in first, get to know everyone, and there are some situations that need to be told to you." I entered the room and looked around for a while before I could see clearly. It was just a corridor with a few benches, and there were 5 or 6 people sitting there smoking, all with their heads down, silent, looking like soldiers. Chief Luo called me to continue walking inside. There were several rooms full of bags, and 2 people with guns were guarding them. I paid attention and saw that there were no number signs on their clothes, and there were no identifiable things, looking like soldiers. Finally, we came to a slightly larger room, and Chief Luo said loudly, "Comrades, please pay attention. I would like to introduce a person to you. This new comrade is called Huan Ning, who is Captain Dan's favorite disciple, and is the underwater dragon we are most lacking now. Later, there will be another expert named Jen who will come, and then our matter will be easy to handle. You should also introduce yourselves. Old Gu, you go first." In a short while, I got to know the 4 people in the room, and they were not from the same unit, and they didn't seem very familiar with each other. The one called Old Gu, whose full name is Gu Ping, is the Deputy Director of the Reservoir Fisheries Supervision and Administration. Zheng Jian, a cadre of the Fujian Navy, is the leader of the team, but I don't know him, and it seems that he went there after I retired. There is also a woman named Li Han, a cadre of the Haijiang Provincial Fisheries Department, the last one I knew when I was in the army. Tong Chuan, a leader of the Fujian Navy, also seems to be the commander here. After everyone introduced themselves, Tong Chuan welcomed my joining very much. From his tone, I felt that they were all at a loss, and they must have encountered some problems in their work. After sitting down, Tong Chuan said seriously, "Comrade Huang, our task this time is assigned by the higher-ups. What exactly we need to do, I can't tell you all at this moment. It's also because we were a bit complacent and careless. We thought the matter on the island was easy to handle and didn't need the help of the Navy's frogmen. But after going in a few times, we found that the problem was very complex, and some situations were simply indescribable and very dangerous. The area where the accident occurred has been strictly sealed by Zheng Jian. You must consider it carefully, and this task must not be leaked." I was nervous when he said this. What happened? Isn't it just a reservoir? There are more islands inside, but what can happen? Tong Chuan continued. Captain Deng said he would be back before dark, so Comrade Huang, you should rest well first, and we will all get up early tomorrow and set out together. Remember, don't ask questions randomly, and don't go well for a stroll. The higher-ups attach great importance to the confidentiality of this task, and it's hard to say whether there are people from other brother units. I was stunned. Just this. You haven't even said what happened. I need to be mentally prepared, otherwise, I won't do it. Tong Chuan smiled bitterly. It's not that I don't want to say it, it's that I can't explain it clearly, and some were ordered by the higher-ups not to say it, so you better go and see for yourself tomorrow. I was a bit annoyed. Hey, you assign work but don't say why. Well, I won't do this job anyway. I'm also a veteran, and I'm just helping. You can wait for Jen to come and go with him. Everyone dispersed unhappily. I was ready to go back home. It's not that I'm timid, but I don't want to be used as a gun. In the evening, I stayed in a relatively clean single room. Just me, but I couldn't sleep at all. Till dawn, I was just about to fall asleep when I heard the sound of footsteps running urgently to my door. The knocking on the door made me angry and wanted to scold. Looking at the sky, it was just before dawn, a little bit bright. It seems that I won't be able to sleep tonight. Reluctantly put on my clothes, opened the door, but it was just the girl I just met, called Li Han, a cadre of the fisheries department. Li Han said anxiously, "Comrade Huang, you also go and have a look." They all were on top of the dock, as if something happened to Captain Deng. I was anxious when I heard this. Captain Deng is back. How did it get to midnight? Let's go. Take me there quickly. Running high and low to the dock, I vaguely saw a jeep, green without a license plate, but it must be a military one, quietly parked on the shore of the dock. Looking around, there was no one, and I asked Li Han in doubt, "Didn't you say they all ran to the dock? Why is there no ghost shadow?" Li Han shook her head and said, "I don't know. Hey, look at this car. I recognize it as Captain Deng's. Captain Deng cherishes it very much and doesn't let anyone else drive it. Clearly parked in the parking lot. How did it run here?" I looked around, and indeed, there was no one, so I had to say, "Let's go and have a look." Li Han and I ran over and took a look. The jeep parked there seemed to have been washed by water, very clean, and there was no one inside. I tried to pull the door, but it couldn't be opened, and it wasn't locked. It should be stuck somewhere. This dock is next to a low hill, and the hill is covered with sparse shrubs. I walked around the jeep and found that there were many messy footprints on the sandy ground, and the toes were all pointing in the same direction, as if many people had just run up the hill. I was about to call Leon to go and have a look together when I heard Leon Stangen at the front of the car calling me over. Walking to the front of the car, I saw something abnormal. There were 2 shallow footprints on the front of the car. One stepped on the seam between the front glass and the hood, a bit deformed. The other one was on the hood, still with some sand. Who climbed on top of the car? Li Han pointed with her hand. Look, there are more on top. On the top of the car is a green canvas, clearly printed with footprints. I asked Li Han to wait below, and I carefully climbed up to take a look. There was nothing on the top of the car, only 2 footprints. The ones I just found were half the front of the foot, and the 2 on the top of the car were very regular together, and the imprint was also deeper, as if the person had been squatting on the top of the car for a long time. What happened? Why would someone climb on top of the car and squat? I scratched my head, a bit confused about what was happening in front of me. From the direction of the hill came a series of hurried footsteps, and Li Han and I looked over and saw Lao Gu and Chief Lu with several soldiers, carrying someone in the middle. walking towards the car. My heart sank. Could it be that something happened to Captain Deng? I went up to take a look, and several people were carrying that person. And it was indeed Captain Deng. His hair was wet, as if he had just been taken out of the water. His face was pale, his eyes tightly closed, his head drooping, and he was unconscious and soft. Captain Deng was sent back to the reception station, and it was already dawn. I found that there were many more people on the road, and many cordons made the atmosphere tense and mysterious. On the road, I carefully observed where Captain Deng was injured, but I found that Captain Deng was intact, with no wounds or bleeding, and his eyeballs would still turn when I flipped his eyelids, but he couldn't speak. The hospital's ambulance came whistling and took the unconscious Captain Deng away. I pulled Chief Luo and asked him angrily, "What's going on? What monster is in the lake? Tell me." Chief Luo looked around and saw that no one was there, and said to me with a depressed face, "Some situations are ordered by the higher-ups not to be said, and I really can't do anything, Huang Ning. You have to understand. You are also a soldier. You know the rules of the army." I was anxious and angry, although Captain Deng, the instructor, was not a kind person and did not show mercy when training us. He always did it for our own good. If someone accidentally got a minor injury, he could always find some folk remedies to treat it, and I always had a good impression of him. So I sighed and said, "Chief Luo, old Deng is also your old friend. Now he has become like this for no reason. I am very sad, and I have decided to join you to find out what happened to him. Tell me, where did you find him?" Chief Luo pulled me into the room. "You should have done this earlier. To be honest, these 2 days, old Deng has been talking about you and Jen all the time, saying why you guys haven't come yet. Is there something that has been delayed?" This morning when we found old Deng, he was squatting alone in the shrubs on the hillside, looking up with his head tilted, not knowing what he was thinking. Lao Gu called him, and he fell down. Alas, I think he was scared. I don't believe at all that Captain Deng was scared and fainted. This person is very brave. When he was an instructor, when he talked about the sunken ships at the bottom of the water, those bodies were all swollen and bloated. He was afraid that we wouldn't understand, and even imitated those bodies, posing as a terrifying look with protruding eyeballs swollen by water. Now Chief Luo said he was scared and fainted. I don't believe it. With his courage, he would be scared by some strange things. Captain Deng went to the hospital, and Chief Luo refused to tell me clearly what happened, leaving me at a loss. Just then, that Chief Lu walked into the room and asked me solemnly, "Comrade Huang, are you really determined to leave?" I said, "No. Just now I made it clear with Chief Luo that I have decided not to leave, to stay and work with you to find out what happened to Captain Deng. What caused him to become like this? You can rest assured, I will do my best and find out the truth." Chief Wu pondered for a moment and said, "That's good. I don't believe you will leave heartlessly after seeing Captain Deng in this state. Now that we've come to this point, Luo, go call everyone here. Let's have a meeting. We can't keep everyone in the dark. I'll discuss some of the situations that everyone is not yet aware of." Sitting on the bench, I, Luo, Lao Gu, Li Han, and Comrade Zhen Jian, who had just rushed back, were all silent, quietly listening to what Leader Lu had to say. The strange occurrences at this large reservoir were so bizarre that the military leadership issued a strict order to keep it confidential. The incident began when a small military helicopter from a certain military region disappeared while flying over Chandao Lake. It was considered a minor accident, with the most likely cause being a mechanical failure that caused the plane to fall into the lake. As a result, the Fisheries Supervision and Management Department of the reservoir and the Haijiang Provincial Fisheries Department conducted a search and salvage operation for the missing aircraft as per routine. After several days of searching, the missing aircraft was still not found, which made the higher-ups anxious. They were worried that if the search took too long, military secrets might be leaked. However, they did not explicitly state what was on the plane. Instead, they directly contacted the frogman unit of the Fujian Navy, asking them to assist in a search for the crashed aircraft. Captain Deng was a person trusted by the leadership with excellent skills, and Zhang Jian was specifically dispatched by the leadership, bringing over 100 people to help Captain Deng. What angered Captain Deng was that the higher-ups did not provide him with more diving experts. They repeatedly stated that, according to intelligence, the crashed aircraft did not sink to the bottom of the water, but was on an island deep in the lake area. They even showed Captain Deng a map indicating that the black box signal was located in an island in the center of the lake area. They believed that having Captain Deng dive alone was sufficient, and did not want too many people to know. Captain Deng had no choice The first time he entered the lake area, he brought several boats straight to that area. Lao Gu went with him. When they returned, they heard Captain Deng constantly muttering that this matter was a bit eerie and he needed help. After consulting with the higher-ups, Leader Lu agreed to the decision to call Huaning and Jen to Jian County to help with the diving. There were two things that we were not aware of, and now Leader Tong Chuan finally revealed them. One was that the black box of the crashed aircraft was clearly stated by the higher-ups to be continuously moving slowly, and for some unknown reason, it could not be accurately located using satellites and radar. The other matter was much more bizarre. Captain Deng found an unspecified number of corpses in the lake area. These corpses were clearly not recently drowned. Captain Deng pulled up one to take a closer look and found that the corpse head was very strange. From the bridge of the nose, it was neatly cut up diagonally backward, and the contents inside the skull had solidified into a blackish iron-like mass, which was extremely foul-smelling. The Xin'anjiang Reservoir was completed in 1960, submerging 49 towns and villages and relocating more than 290,000 people. 25 years later, corpses that died a violent death were discovered, and Captain Deng also said that there were definitely not just one or two bodies underwater, but a large area with many bodies floating in the water. After considering, they concluded that these bodies could not have been bitten off by a fish, which could only mean that there had been a horrifying murder case in the empty houses below. The matter was too big, and no one dared to leak the news. After reporting to the military region leaders overnight, the higher-ups allowed one corpse to be brought back for research. However, the clothes on the corpse were soaked and difficult to recognize. It took a lot of effort to determine that it should be the body of a soldier from the military, strangely tied with leggings, and from the collar patches and other rusty small decorations, it should be the remains of a soldier from the local warlord during the Republic of China period. After Tong Chuan finished speaking, we were all very surprised. Could there really be the remains of soldiers from the Republic of China period, the Beiyang warlords, in the reservoir? How is that possible? This is not a desolate mountain area. It used to be some towns and villages. If there were a large number of corpses, wouldn't they have been discovered long ago? How could they be preserved until now? And why are they floating in the water at this time? I looked at Tong Chuan, and this guy was looking at us with an unchanging expression. His face was indecisive, and I didn't know what he was thinking. I immediately suspected that he must have something to hide from us. But he is an official, deceiving us, these small guys. That is just deceiving, I said to Tong Chuan. Then, can you let me see where the corpse is? Tong Chuan helplessly spread his hands. No way, the corpse is too stinky. It was just burned last night. I then understood the source of the foul smell from last night. This guy actually burned the corpse near where we were staying. It was too unscrupulous, right? Lowell looked at me angrily and hurriedly said, when Captain Deng came back last night, why did it take until almost dawn? And what about the people who went with him? Zhen Jian interjected. I know this. It was my men on guard duty. At dawn, they found Captain Deng coming in alone, not saying hello, driving the car and running, heading straight for the direction of the dock. Another guard reported to me, and I hurriedly took Lao Gu with me to go out, running to the dock, and saw only Captain Deng's jeep, empty and placed there. There was not even a shadow of a boat at the dock, and there was no one. I haven't figured out what's going on yet. If it weren't for Lao Gu seeing the footprints on the ground, maybe we wouldn't have found Captain Deng. I was stunned and forgot about this. Luo said that when Captain Deng was found, he was squatting in the bushes, looking up. Then did your soldiers search around for any clues? It's not possible that Captain Deng came back in the middle of the night, drove to the dock, just to be dizzy on the mountain, right? Zhen Jian shook his head. There are no clues. There is no abnormal situation at all. Everyone was scratching their heads, not knowing what to do. Tong Chuan said again, Captain Deng has been hospitalized, and we don't know the reason yet. Fortunately, Comrade Huaning is proficient in water. We can still go to the scene for investigation, and it's better to complete the task as soon as possible to give an explanation to Captain Deng and the missing comrades. What do you think? I pondered and said, how many times did Captain Deng go in total? Apart from the corpse, did it bring back anything else? Since there are military secrets on the crashed plane, we won't care about it. Is it just finding the black box that completes the task? Tong Chuan thought for a moment and replied, this should be the case. Although there are indeed military secrets on the crashed plane, the higher-ups ordered us not to care about it. Only the black box must be found. So I think we should try to avoid those corpses as much as possible. Of course, if the conditions permit, it is also possible to salvage them for unified treatment. After all, this is a reservoir. Scaring the people is not good, and it also pollutes the water quality. I looked at Tong Chuan, not knowing what he was selling in his gourd. His words were ambiguous, just like that person. making us people blow guests with our heads to do things, which is not easy to do wrong. Lao Gu said. Captain Deng went a total of 3 times. Only the first time he spent a long time underwater. The second time he only stayed for half a day, salvaged a corpse and hurried back. Yesterday was the 3rd time. He couldn't wait for you, and Comrade Jen insisted that there was trouble that must be solved as soon as possible. Took a boat. 7 or 8 people in a hurry went. I couldn't help slapping my thigh. Alas, if that letter hadn't been delayed on the road, I would have come a day earlier. Could also figure out what kind of trouble Captain Deng encountered. Now this matter is a mess. Jen, this guy is too unreasonable. The old leader specifically wrote a letter to call him, and there is still no person shadow. What is he doing? I remember Zhang retired. The unit he was demobilized to is not far from here. Tong Chuan clapped his hands and said, Okay. I think we will go again today. Although Captain Deng has been hospitalized, doesn't Lao Gu also know how to get there? Comrade Huan Ning, you and Lao Gu lend a hand. Zheng Ji and send more people to follow and strive to succeed. Li Heng quickly stood up and said, I also want to go. Tong Chuan impatiently waved his hand. No, this is a military matter. You comrades from the local area can't solve it. Let's do it ourselves. Li Heng was not happy. This Xin Anjiang Reservoir. Once something happens, our unit can't not know. Besides, the higher-ups sent me here, not to let me sit here and listen to the report. Tong Chuan just didn't agree. Li Heng, a young girl in her 20s, was very stubborn. Comrade Liu, don't forget who ordered you to pick me up here. Do you want me to call him and talk about it? Tong Chuan hesitated for a moment, seemingly very wary of the person the young girl mentioned who gave the order. After a while of stalemate, he had to nod in agreement. At this time, it was already broad daylight, and we packed up our equipment and set off by boat. This is said to be an inland reservoir, but the water surface is exceptionally vast, with countless islands of various sizes distributed in the middle, with few plankton in the water, and the lake water appears extremely azure. We Saturday in for boats, and it was very pleasant to walk on the water. The entire lake area is divided into 5 major lake areas: northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, and center, about 150 kilometers long. The widest place is more than 10 kilometers wide. The deepest place is more than 100 meters. The area is more than 100 times larger than West Lake in Hangzhou, and the water storage is more than 3,000 times larger than West Lake, with nearly 600 square kilometers, almost comparable to the land area of Singapore. Sitting at the bow of the boat, I was not in the mood to appreciate the beautiful lake scenery, and the shadow in my heart could not be dispelled. What was the military aircraft doing in this inland lake? Why is the black box moving slowly? Could it have been eaten by some big fish? But I remembered that the black boxes are all red or orange, with a solid shell, like the one on this military helicopter, at least as big as 3 or 4 bricks stuck together. Could there be such a blind big fish that swallows a red iron lump and can still swim leisurely in the water? If it's not a big fish, what would the situation be? Could it be related to those corpses? After the plane crashed, the black box has a positioning beacon, equivalent to a radio transmitter, which can automatically emit a specific frequency, facilitating rescue personnel to search. But I saw Zhang Jian's soldiers carrying many bags onto the boat, some of which were obviously heavy weapons, and some instruments brought by the young girl Li Heng. I can't even name them. We were like going to war. The soldiers were all armed, but no one told me which is the special instrument for tracking the black box. It took about half a day, and in the afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock, our boat gradually slowed down. Lao Gu came over and said to me that the first time he came in with Captain Deng, the boat stopped at this place. There were 2 quite large stone islands standing upright on the water surface. After passing around, Captain Deng said that there were too many small islands inside, and the waterways were interconnected, very easy to get lost, so he didn't go in further. I looked at these 2 large stone islands, both a bit grotesque and ferocious, blocking the water surface, with no trees on top, very different from the green islands we encountered along the way. This Lao Gu is indeed a qualified fisheries supervision personnel, remembering the waterway is quite good in the vast water surface, without getting lost, directly to the place. Good is a talent. There is still 1 or 2 hours before dark. I pack up my diving equipment and want to go underwater to familiarize myself with the situation. Zhen Jian stopped me and said, No, Comrade Huan Ning, you used to be an old soldier. I should not stop you. But before setting out, the leader Liu asked me to be fully responsible for your personal safety. It is about to get dark, and my soldiers have just started to deploy and have not yet done the alert. You can't go underwater. I was a bit helpless. Why is there someone everywhere who manages me? The young girl Li Heng shouted, Come and see. There is something in the water. Following the sound, I ran over and saw that in front of our boat. Although the azure lake water was not very clear, it could barely be seen to a certain depth underwater. Just at the most hazy depth, there was a pale face floating in the water face up. This face is a bit strange. I rub my eyes, make sure it is not the effect of the lake water refraction, but the face itself is unusually large, more than twice the size of a normal person's face. Even if the dead face is swollen by the water, it is impossible to swell so much. The ratio is obviously not right. If it weren't for the facial features on the face, I wouldn't believe it would be a human face. These facial features are also strange. The eyes are wide open, staring at me motionless, without the breath of a living person. The mouth is misplaced. The upper and lower lips are not aligned. The flat ears are close to the cheeks. The position that should be higher than the nose is only a lump of round meat, like someone placed a chess piece. The most strange is that the position of these facial features is very awkward, also very stiff. Always feel that it has been moved to a new position, stuck back on. I carefully looked under that strange face, trying to understand where the neck and torso of the face are, but was blocked by the lake water and could only see that the lower part was also very large. Seemingly not wearing any clothes, Li-Han nervously grabbed my hand and said, "Look." He moved. Without her saying, I had already seen that strange big face slowly turned in the water, as if to face us with the back of the head. I was a bit creepy, unconsciously clenching Li-Han's hand tightly. The palm was sweating, but I am a firm atheist. Never believed that there will be any ghosts or monsters in this world. I have encountered all kinds of hardships. When Captain Dang trained us, he tied our hands and feet with wire and threw us into the sea, claiming to train the will to survive. He kicked us into the water one by one, only giving us 15 minutes to climb onto the boat from the water. At that time, his indifference and ruthlessness, the corners of his mouth twitching, as if our life and death were not in his heart. Sometimes, when executing tasks underwater, dragging dead bodies out of the sunken cabins, the incomplete corpses made me feel sick for several days and couldn't eat. Some very innocent drowned children. That miserable situation. Alas, don't mention it. But I have never encountered evil spirits or zombies. To put it bluntly, those things that scare people are all made up by the living to scare other living people. But at this moment, this strange big face in the water is slowly turning over, and I feel a bit cold, because I see that the back of this dead body's head is not round, but like a piece of paper, thin. The whole head is like it has been rolled over by a road roller, which is not a human appearance. It is clearly a meat pancake. I saw some fish swimming around the meat pancake. Some were nibbling at the edge of the meat pancake. The dead body was gently bumped, slowly turned in the water, and sank down. And those fish immediately swam away, as if this human meat had been processed, not rotten in the water, and these fish couldn't bite it. We all stared in bewilderment at the edge of the boat. The corpses that Captain Dang had brought back had half their skulls neatly shaved off, and now we see this one being crushed into a meat patty-like shape. How could there be such strange floating corpses in the water? Could there be an ancient tomb that has been breached? Lao Gu shook his head. I don't think there are any ancient tombs. The water depth of the reservoir is at most 100 meters, about the height of a 30-story building. These two stone islands were originally a not very tall mountain peak. On the way here, I was calculating which area this was before it was flooded. It should be in the territory of Gionda City, although I'm not very sure. This mountain is very similar to some of the peaks of Ayanangkar Mountain. Ayanangkar Mountain is full of cars cased in underground rivers, and it's impossible for there to be any ancient tombs. I know that Gionda City is to the southeast of Jian County, and Ayanangkar Mountain is a sightseeing cave that has been open to the outside world for a long time. I always thought our boat was heading southwest, and the lake water is the same everywhere, which made me hesitate after what Lao Gu said. I wondered if I was lost, but I didn't hear that Ayanangkar Mountain had any other peaks. Captain Dang said that behind these two stone mountains, there are countless small islands, and there are many crisscrossing waterways, which could easily become a labyrinth-like water area. Looking at the sky that gradually wanted to darken, I shook my head secretly. It seems that it is going to rain here, so let's forget it for today, and don't go into the water. I found that I was still holding Li-Han's hand, and I quickly let go, feeling very embarrassed. Zhen Jian has been gloomy all the time and didn't say anything. I approached him and asked, "Brother, what are you thinking? Isn't it said that our main task is to find that black box? Where is your instrument for searching for the black box signal? Let's take a look and set a general direction, and I will go down to retrieve it." Zhen Jian looked at me without saying a word, lowered his voice and said, "It's getting dark. Let's talk about it tomorrow." The other 3 boats were all soldiers brought by Zhen Jian. While we were talking, they had already arranged in a fan shape, holding the waterway of these two stone mountains. Soon, the fragrance of cooked food floated on the lake. No one was interested in catching the fish from a lake to eat. I was also disgusted by the floating corpse in the water and lost my appetite. I simply ate 2 bowls of course rice and came out to stand at the bow of the boat to think. It seems that among so many of us, including Tong Chuan, who did not come in with the boat, there should still be a command department quietly directing this task in the dark. Even the young girl Li Hung, who looks fresh and beautiful, has an unfathomable background behind her. She was ordered by the higher-ups to participate, and it might be that she's a spy, planted by the higher-ups in the fisheries department. Never mind them. I have to think about Captain Deng, who is an old hand at diving, and finally disappeared with 7 or 8 people. As soon as he went back, he hurriedly went to drive his own jeep. Where is he going? Where is his boat? If the 2 footprints on the roof of the car belong to Captain Deng, yes, they belong to Captain Deng. I remember that when Captain Deng was lifted onto the ambulance, he was wearing a kind of military boots. I subconsciously took a glance and found that this kind of military boots were a form paratrooper boots with hundreds of rubber slopes on the bottom. Anti-slip performance is first class. If Captain Deng is a diver, where did he get such a pair of paratrooper boots to wear? The shoelaces also seemed to be tied in a hurry. What on earth did he encounter? Captain Deng squatted on the roof for a long time. I assume that something forced him to climb up to hide. Then what is the thing under the car that won't climb up? Or is it someone who didn't see Captain Deng? Later, when Captain Deng was found, he ran to the bushes on the low mountain and squatted again, still looking up. Right. Why does he always squat? Assuming that the crash plane fell into the lake and broke some building, or collapsed an island. These islands used to be some mountain peaks. Could it be that there is something hidden in the mountain belly that happened to fall out? But the black box of the plane is moving slowly. It shouldn't be the case, right? The sky gradually darkened. The expected rain did not come, but the lake did start to blow. The dark islands everywhere are like crouching monsters, watching our 4 boats, quietly confronting each other on the water. Since I can't figure out the reason for all these things, I simply put aside these tangled thoughts for the time being and chatted with Lao Gu. Zhang Jian didn't know what he was doing in his room, and he didn't show up after dinner. The young girl Li Hung did come out and joined our chatting group. Since the Xin'anjiang Reservoir was built and the dam was completed, there have been many legends, and naturally, there have been many strange things. Lao Gu told us that on the southwest side of the Xin'anjiang Reservoir, in Xinjiao Township of Changshan County, which is close to the mysterious 30 degrees north latitude, there is a group of Niujiao caves. The villagers say that there are 99 halls in the Niujiao cave group, many of which are still within the territory of Jianan. These caves are interconnected internally, and no one has known the exact number of caves. There are underground rivers inside the cave group, with water flowing all year round. People pump water out from the Niujiao cave, and the water is endless. No one knows where the water comes from and where it goes. Lao Gu has been there before, and he drifted a long way with the water but couldn't reach the end. Sometimes it seems that there is no way to go, but after diving, there is another hall, following the underground river inside the cave. Lao Gu speculated that it can directly reach Thousand Island Lake. These waters should eventually flow into Thousand Island Lake, but the water is very cold, and the underwater situation is unclear. In addition, there are sinkholes on the nearby mountain tops, and Lao Gu does not dare to personally test the truth. The sinkhole is like a natural alpine lake, with a large pit area, estimated to be more than 10 square kilometers, like a huge bowl with an open mouth placed on the mountain top. When it rains heavily, the water from all sides of the mountain rolls down and all flows into the Niujiao cave group. Such a huge amount of water surges in, and it has not caused a disaster, which shows that the cave group is very large and interconnected. It is said that during the Republic of China, the warlord Sundar had come to see the sinkhole and had stationed troops to block it for a period of time. No one knows what tricks he did, and later they all withdrew. Nearby, people quietly said that they saw Sundar send several opera troops down the sinkhole, and they never came out silently. Li Hung listened attentively and then asked, could it be that the corpse Captain Deng brought back was one of Sundar's soldiers? Why didn't you report such an important situation when you were on the shore? Lao Gu said awkwardly, these are all legends, not credible. If it turns out to be a wild guess, and I point the leaders in the wrong direction, wouldn't that affect the mission? Besides, I am just a fishery supervision officer. Cooperating with you to salvage the black box of the plane and completing the mission is enough. I'm worried about causing unnecessary trouble and making a big fuss, which would be bad. I said, Lao Gu, that's where you're wrong. You have to know that many legends are very close to the truth. Zhang Jian, Xiao Zhang, and I are considered outsiders. If there's anything we don't know, you have to continue to tell us. We're now on the same boat, and if we go into the water or into the cave and something happens, you, as a reservoir management cadre, will be held accountable. Lao Gu quickly waved his hand and said, No, there's nothing else. It's just that I've been wandering around this reservoir for a long time, and I've heard too much. I can't think of it all at once. In this way, as soon as I think of something, I will report it to everyone immediately. Okay, I snorted and said, just don't only report to that Zengjian. Lao Gu looked back and lowered his voice. That cadre Zengjian. I heard that he is a big official in the Fujian Navy. His soldiers seem to have revealed that Zengjian is the head of a secret department of the Navy, and Van Chen has to listen to his command this time. Xiao Wan, did you know him when you were in the Navy? I curled my lips. He's so arrogant. How could I know such a person? But maybe that's just his temperament, not liking to talk. When I was a soldier, I was an honest kid, not jumping around and causing trouble everywhere. The secret department you mentioned, I really don't know. Some things still can't be said. An old comrade secretly told me that last month, a torpedo boat from the North Sea Fleet had sailors who killed 6 officers on the boat and defected abroad. The fleet commander was also dismissed. Since then, there has indeed been a new department in the military, specifically doing etnological work with sailors. I don't know the details, so I dare not talk about what Zengjian's background is. Seeing that I didn't speak, Lao Gu thought for a moment and said, there are legends about the sinkhole too. The nearby villagers say that there is a cow spirit inside, and every time it comes out to do evil, it either eats people or tramples the wheat. I laughed. The conditions in this cave are not suitable for the survival of large animals. The story of the man-eating monster is really a legend to deceive people. Lao Gu nodded. I think so too. There are also brave villagers who climb into the depths to see, and they find that within tens of meters of the stone hall near the entrance, the top is inhabited by a dark mass of bats, tens of thousands, with a thick layer of dark feces on the ground. The stone walls are full of insects like crickets, and there are many centipedes, rolling around everywhere. If you go further in, it gets cold, more than 10 degrees lower than the outside, and there are no traces of other animals. I smiled and turned to look at Li Hun. The young girl listened to our idle chat and has always been very calm in the night, and I guess that although she is a woman, she may have also seen the ups and downs. Everyone's units are different, except for me, a person who does nothing. There seems to be some vigilance between each other. When I go back, I really want to ask Captain Dan what strange clues he found. I think at least my old leader will not deceive me. I didn't sleep well last night. After chatting for a while, I felt sleepy, and I said hello to them and went back to sleep. In the middle of the night, I suddenly shook, almost rolling off the bed, lying on the bed and feeling dizzy. Before I could recover, there was a metal scraping sound. Something scraped the bottom of the boat, shaking me in place, turning over, and falling back into the bed. I thought it was not good. There was a situation. I jumped up, opened the door to see what was going on, and it should have rained at night. The air was very cool, and the boat was wet everywhere. Standing at the bow of the boat, I felt something was wrong. Before going to bed, the boat was clearly anchored and fixed. Why do I feel that it is slowly moving now? Struggling to look ahead. It's not good. The boat is drifting towards the stone mountain, and there is a dark big hole under the stone mountain, opening its mouth wide, and the lake water is constantly flowing in. Our boat is also drifting in with the water flow, and the hole is not as big as the boat. We will definitely hit the stone and get stuck on the side of the mountain. The other 3 boats that were scattered around at this time were also dark, and I couldn't see where they were. I panicked. In the depths of this lake, without a boat, it would be difficult to deal with. Even if others came to rescue, it would be hard to find. I shouted loudly for the people on the boat to get up quickly. I believe that with Zhang Jian's caution, he would definitely leave a guard on duty, but it's strange that no one paid attention to me after I called several times. I had to turn around and go back to the cabin to knock on the door. Just as I was about to turn around, I heard a sound in my ear. Very strange. It should not be the sound that should be here. It was a sound that could only be heard on a stage. Drums, small gongs, horns, and the sound of an erhu. In the dark and silent night, it faintly drifted over, and I couldn't tell which direction it was coming from. I was shocked and uncertain. How could there be a troupe performing in the depths of the lake? It must be my own illusion. But the sound of the singing on the open and dark water surface slowly drifted over from the distance, becoming clearer and more piercing. A hand tightly pressed on my shoulder. I suddenly shook, almost using the action of capturing to counterattack. It turned out to be Lao Gu, who was putting a finger on his lips, indicating that I should not make a sound. Lao Gu nodded his mouth, and I followed the direction to see a dark mass floating on the water surface, just like our boat, heading towards the stone mountain. On this dark mass, there was a small red light, flickering like a cigarette butt, and the sound of singing came from there. I tried my best to see, but I couldn't see what it was. But it was definitely not a ghost or a real troupe performing on stage, but it was an undeniable fact. The dark mass floated more and more slowly, and our boat also slowed down. I asked Lao Gu in a low voice. Where are they? Why, there is no sentry on the boat. If it were on the front line, we would have been beheaded by the enemy's underwater ghosts. Lao Gu shook his head and said, there are no people on the boat anymore. In the middle of the night, I heard a bit of movement, and upon listening carefully, it was Zhang Jian leading people to disembark. The young lady from the fisheries department seemed to have followed, and there was some quarreling. But in the end, no one came to call us too. I was stunned, and I was shocked and angry. What's going on? Are we being treated as spies and isolated? Where did they go? Did you hear anything? Lao Gu said, they should have gone to the Stone Mountain. There are more than a dozen people, and they carried something heavy with a lot of effort. Zhang Jian took people to the Stone Mountain in the middle of the night, left me and Lao Gu on the boat. It's impossible. The more I think about it, the more bizarre it is. Why would they do this? He is at least a serving soldier, and I am also a veteran. We're all on the same side, right? Oh no, it's not easy to say whether he is a serving soldier. I haven't seen him in uniform. I just heard that he introduced himself as someone from the Fujian Navy. I took a look at Lao Gu's face, and my heart couldn't help but beat faster, and I began to doubt the authenticity of Lao Gu. Lao Gu's face is unclear. It's hard to say whether he is a friend or an enemy. There is no one around who can let me trust absolutely. I should have insisted on waiting for my old comrade Ding Zhen to come, and the best friends would take care of each other, which is much better than being isolated and helpless now. I asked Lao Gu, Zhang Jian took people off the boat, and it's impossible to take everyone away, right? Isn't he afraid that we will take his boat away, and he won't be able to come back? Lao Gu smiled bitterly and said, he left the person who drives the boat all locked in the engine room. I just checked. The people inside said that Zhang Jian ordered them to stay in the cabin, and they can't leave unless he comes back or another boat sends a radio. What is this guy doing? I'm so angry and confused. Isn't this boat anchored? How can it drift? And what hit the bottom of the boat? What kind of officers is Zhang Jian to be so careless? Lao Gu said, I asked them. They don't know what happened either. Zhang Jian said he could come back at dawn, at most a few hours. That's why he locked them up. Sure. Here's the translation of the text from the document. I thought for a moment and said, well, let's not worry about that for now. If this boat just drifts and hits a rock, or gets stuck in that dark hole, we're all going to be in trouble, and that big dark mess. It's coming with a fierce momentum and doesn't seem friendly. We need to deal with these troubles first, and then we can settle things with Zhang Jian when he comes back. After all, he's an official, and it's possible he's just following orders from higher up. The boat did indeed stop, as if that big hole had been filled with water, and the water flow had also stabilized. How could the rain from last night have such a big effect? I couldn't figure it out, so I shifted my attention to the dark mass in the water next to the boat. Looking at my watch, it was a little after 4 in the morning, and it was still quite dark everywhere. The singing sound was like it was about to run out of breath, sometimes there and sometimes not. Chief Gu and I both focused on the water, staring at the red dot in the dark mass, guessing what this thing might be. You see that red dot? What could it be? Is it the eye of some kind of animal? I said, no way, right? There's no such thing as a giant one-eyed monster. That's just nonsense. I don't think it's alive. Otherwise, how could it drift at the same speed as our boat on the water? It seems more like a small island. You see, there are some shadows on it, and it seems to have a lot of grass. Chief Gu said in amazement. Impossible, right? How could there be a floating island? I suddenly remembered something, and quickly asked Chief Gu. I remember this area. You said it's almost to the territory of Jianda City. That is, the southeast direction of Jian County. Have you noticed any changes in the water in the lake along the way? For example, the color of the water, the speed of the water flow, the temperature of the water, and so on. Chief Gu shook his head. I always pay attention to these hydrological data, but there is indeed no abnormality along the way. Xiao Wan, you often deal with water. Can't you see what that thing is? I was a bit frustrated. I originally thought of a possibility, but Chief Gu said that there was no abnormality in the hydrological data along the way, and I had to shake my head and say, alas, I can't see it. If you say it's a lot of water plants, they grow a bit too low, almost parallel to the water surface. If you say it's a submerged plant, it just floats out of the water with a smooth edge. Chief Gu said nervously, could it really be a water monster? Look at how dark the water is. There might be a larger volume underneath, and it's still motionless. What on earth is it doing? I lowered my voice and asked Chief Gu, do you have a gun with you? If you do, take it out. I want to shoot at it. Chief Gu nodded. There is a shotgun, given to me by the unit, used to catch the small thieves who fish by electricity. I was just about to urge him to take it out when I heard a gunshot from behind the stone mountain. Very muffled, almost at the same time, countless bubbles emerged from the dark mass next to our boat, accompanied by a strange sound. as if a barefoot person stepped into a pond, squeezing out a piece of mud from the gaps between the toes. Chief Gu and I hurriedly lay down on the side of the boat, nervously watching the direction of the gunshot, while also worrying about that dark, motionless thing. It was quite embarrassed, but the gun only rang once, and then there was no more movement, and the surroundings returned to silence. I suddenly noticed that the red light that had been flashing was definitely gone. I became irritable and said to Chief Gu, "Hold the shotgun here and wait for me. I'll go down and take a look." Chief Gu held me back. "It's so dark. Is it okay? You must not have an accident. You have to pay attention to safety," I said impatiently. "Don't worry. Give me a flashlight for underwater use. I don't even need a gas bottle. Let you see what a frogman is." Chief Gu went back and groped for a while, took out a short-handled flashlight and handed it to me. I took a close look and it was strange, so I asked Chief Gu suspiciously, "Where did this come from? What kind of bulb is it?" Chief Gu smiled and said, "They say it's a krypton bulb. At least it can go down to 70 meters deep." What a good thing. How does Chief Gu have this thing? I was full of doubts and asked Chief Gu where he got this thing, but Chief Gu just smiled and refused to say. These days I have really seen a lot, and I have known what a mysterious person is. Looking at one by one around me, they are all very annoying. I was also tired of asking, and I was too lazy to ask again. I slowly slid into the water along the side of the boat, without causing a single splash. This good water quality was trained out of cruelty. When I was in the water, I held my diving knife that I had been with day and night, and I felt calm in my heart, and even the heart that was beating wildly became stable. According to the principle, after the rain, the lake water should be a bit cooler, but I couldn't feel the water being cold, and I couldn't help feeling a bit strange. When I was about to reach the place, I decided to go underwater first, so I took a deep breath, held the flashlight in one hand, and the knife in the other, and slowly approached the dark mass. The lake water, where the light reached, was relatively turbid, with many suspended substances, completely different from the clarity I imagined. Just as I wanted to float up to take a breath, I felt something touch my face, soft and not pulling. Cool, sticky, soft. That's the feeling on the cheek that was touched. Although the whole person is soaked in water, that part still feels sticky, as if something is stuck on it. My reaction was to turn around and dive down immediately, and at the same time, shine the flashlight towards the position just now. It's bad. This short-handled flashlight is very inconvenient to use. I'm not used to it at all with such a turn. I actually dropped it in the crooked light. I saw a fat toad, kicking its legs in the water, rushing to the dark mass, and disappearing. I was confused. Toads are not good at swimming. How could there be one here? But one thing is certain, this dark mass is absolutely inanimate, and the toad didn't react at all when it jumped on it. Because I was busy looking at what touched me, when I came back to my senses, I went to pick up the dropped flashlight, but it had already sunk out of sight. I was full of bitterness. This was an unfortunate start. It's dark everywhere. I can't see anything clearly. What should I do? Damn toad. It ruined my big deal. I gritted my teeth and made up my mind, and simply went to touch the dark mass. With such a quick dive in the water, I drove a stream of water and pressed my hand on it, not touching the expected hard stone, but touching a soft thing, and it hit back as soon as it touched my hand. What is it? Is it a corpse? I felt a tingling in my scalp, and in the dark, the disgusting image of a bloated, drowned corpse immediately filled my mind. At the same time, someone patted me gently on the back of my head. Damn it, I was almost scared silly by the sudden attack in the dark, and I didn't dare to hesitate any longer. I jumped up, and with a backhand knife, I slashed it. The frogmen in the army have been professionally trained, especially in the use of diving knives, how to stab, chop, slash, and so on. Many practical routines, extremely fierce, and I'm confident that my level is also quite good. Now that it is a matter of life and death, I use it especially well. But what I never dreamed of was that such a fierce knife was actually caught by the other party. This thing that patted me on the head, although it caught my knife, but it's not the feeling of being stuck in it. My knife can still slowly move in this thing, but I can't use my strength in the water. I clearly feel that the blade is about to come out, but it's always a little bit short. In the dark water, I vaguely saw the outline of this thing. It's not human-like at all, and the color is very black, and it can also emit some suspended particles, stirring the water turbid. I dare not open my eyes anymore, worried about what toxins there might be in the water, so I simply closed my eyes, stabilized my emotions, and once again gritted my teeth and tried hard to pull the diving knife back. Big trouble. I used too much force, and the knife was pulled out, sliding in the water, changing direction, almost stabbing myself. And the dark monster, following the trajectory of the knife, also pounced in the water, narrowly sliding past me, almost making a physical contact. Could be that what I hit was indeed a corpse, originally suspended in the water, and when I dodged the toad, I brought up a stream of water and drifted over, speaking of it for a long time. In fact, I know these things happen in a very short time. The violent movement in the water plus the tension. I felt bad. The time to hold my breath was about to come. I had to float up to breathe. At this time, I felt very uneasy in the dark water. Although my eyes were closed, I subconsciously felt the danger, and I immediately noticed that there were definitely more than one guy around me, and there were more or less 5 or 6 of them gathering around me, and it seemed that they were not friendly and were going to touch me, as if they were going to do me harm. This scared me a lot, and I regretted not taking this ability, and I came down alone to find out, and it would not be worth it if I died. I remembered that Dingto had taught us to stay calm no matter what the situation is. I felt that the things around were not very fierce, so I took my fate and poked my finger, and I didn't expect that my palm, with this poke, was completely stuck in it. Is it really a corpse? My mind was immediately filled with the image of a bloated, fat, drowned corpse. Although I was in the water, I felt extremely hot all over, and I hurriedly pulled out my palm, stepped back a few steps, and left this dangerous water area. But the breath in my lungs could no longer be held, so I had to jump up and come out of the water. The depth of the dive was not very big, and I quickly came out of the water, looking at the dark night sky. The feeling of oxygen rushing into the lungs was really comfortable. I raised my palm, carefully identified the things on it, and looked at the dark mass again, and I vaguely understood what this thing was. Only one step away from confirming, I could completely understand. I took a deep breath again and dove into the water with an idea and a goal. Plus the scare just now. I went straight to the position where the flashlight fell. If I guessed correctly, the flashlight would definitely be found, and the water here would definitely not be too deep. A quick dive, about 30 meters. This is the maximum depth I can maintain without external force and the necessary stay time. And at this depth, I touched the bottom of the lake. The drop flashlight was laying quietly on the bottom of the lake, and I picked it up quickly, carefully floating up, and the dark mass finally revealed its true face under the light of my flashlight. A large piece of swamp was suspended in the water, boundless. At least I couldn't see the end with my flashlight, and there were a lot of mud and roots connected to the bottom of the lake only a few meters away. Like a plate that was originally placed on the bottom of the lake was forcibly lifted by the water, and I was almost scared by the object of the fight. It was just a piece of mud that fell off the edge of the swamp, soaked and deteriorated. This swamp does not seem to be natural. The mud contains some different components, and as I dived again, as I expected, I just need to figure out 3 questions. One is why this swamp is suspended. The second is what is the red dot that disappeared in the swamp. The third is what chemical elements are in the swamp, which can make the fallen mud completely weightless and still maintain its shape. I looked over at the boat floating not far away, preparing to return, and vaguely saw a person lying on the side of the boat, like the shape of Chief Goo, holding a gun, aiming at the stone mountain. And next to the gun barrel protruding from the boat, close to the bow of the boat, there was a thin and tin thing, like a gecko, slyly looking up and peeping at Chief Goo. Generally speaking, when a person is doing something, if someone else suddenly appears next to them, peeping coldly and motionless, it is usually not a good thing, and it is likely to be full of malice, ready to find an opportunity to harm people at any time. I was anxiously watching that thing, sticking to the outer shell of the boat, and the hands and feet were also very tight. I couldn't tell whether it was a person or an animal for a while. The situation now is that I am in the water, Chief Goo is on the boat, and that thing is between us. If I shout loudly, it's okay if it jumps into the water. I can fight, as long as it's not too evil in the water. I think I can handle it with my own abilities. But if it's Chief Goo who is startled, and the gun accidentally hits me, it would be a pity, especially if he relaxes, and that thing pulls him into the water. It would be a big trouble. I couldn't think of it, and I was so anxious that I didn't know what to do. So I took the flashlight and pointed it at the top of Chief Goo. Chief Goo's gun moved, aimed in my direction. I was shocked, and I wanted to dive down, but the gun immediately raised. It seems that Chief Goo recognized the flashlight in my hand, and he has relaxed his vigilance. Fortunately, the thing sticking to the boat shell was not startled, but the head that was slightly raised followed the gun barrel, and then it was still. But it can be seen that the joints of the hands and feet that were holding the boat shell were a bit tight, as if they were about to jump up. This is not good. I am ready. If this thing jumps up, I will shout loudly to scare it. If it doesn't move, I will touch it and give it a knife. Chief Goo recognized me, but he didn't stand up, still lying there, and the gun barrel pointed back to the original place. Could it be that this guy is confronting something on the stone mountain? I was cold again. If that's the case, then I was in the water, and I was completely exposed to the enemy opposite Chief Goo. Regardless, I swam quietly towards the bottom of the gun barrel under the boat shell in the water, trying not to make a sound, getting closer and closer to the thing sticking to the boat shell. And suddenly I felt a bit different behind me, as as if there was an undercurrent coming towards me, and the swamp made a strange sound, and I even felt the water waves surging around me. I have encountered this dangerous feeling before, which is usually caused by animals in the water, and I was fully prepared to meet the attack behind me. A strong smell of fish came first, and I smelled the water and calmed down, and there was probably a catfish lying at the bottom of the lake behind me, living in the swamp for a long time, thinking I was some food, following me to pick up the leakage. I held the knife in my hand, with the tip pointing out. The catfish is quite good at dealing with other freshwater fish, but the body is not big. I have dealt with a lot in the reservoir and pond, so it is a small dish to kill it.